we're not getting paid enough for this. Wait, are we getting paid for this?
What is up, people? Van for the VaniverseGaming channel here, bringing another video. Today's video, I'm going to give you my first impressions of a game I got to demo called Dark Envoy. Now, Dark Envoy is the second game created by a company called Event Horizon. The first game was a game called Tower of Time. Now, that game came back in 2018. It had very positive reviews. I actually played it. If you click on the eye in the top right-hand corner, you can see my review, and I'll also post it in the description below. Now, they've come a long way from their game in 2018. They've definitely done a lot to this game to try and make it more modernized for the audience of today for these style games, but they are still an indie company, so this is not going to be a game that's going to blow you away like some of the other AAA games that are out there, so you should temper your expectations. Now, I want to break it down to the different segments, so let's get started, and at the end I'll kind of give you my summary of the demo after playing for about an hour and a half. First, I want to talk about the game itself. Now, Dark Envoy this game is a combination of like an RPG mixed with a tactical combat game. So there's 3 different combat modes. There's pause, there's slow time, and there's real time. So as similar to some other games that are isometric RPGs, you can pause, make all your things and unpause, or you can just do it in real time. But this one adds a slow motion, which is a nice third option because I actually prefer to slow things down so things are still moving, and then also make all my decisions and then unpause in certain situations. Now, the story goes you are a brother-sister combination, and you're in the world of Jäan, and you are relic hunters that are kind of wandering around and figuring stuff out. And through your adventures, you pick up other relic hunters into your party that kind of help you along the way. So when you start the game, you actually start by building out 2 characters, a brother and sister combination, which we'll get here in the next section. So let's talk about the character creation. The character creation for an indie game is pretty darn good. There's enough detail in the art to make it look pretty real. I mean, the art is pretty darn good when it comes to the styles, the color choices, the hair, all the body. I mean, it really is well done for a indie company, in my opinion. Now, of course, there's going to be things that you're not going to have a ton of different sliders and stuff as some of the other games, but for a top-down game where you're only really seeing your characters in cutscenes, I think this is quite a good character creation with the options that they have to offer and the slider options that you get. So once you get your looks going for both the brother-sister combo, then it's time to move into the classes. Now, this is where I think it's pretty cool. They actually have 4 different class options: Warrior, Ranger, Engineer, and Adept. You know, your Warrior is obviously going to be your tank, melee, DPS. Your Ranger is going to be more of your trickster type guy with poisons and those types of things. You have your Engineer. He's kind of like a Ranger, but he does a little bit more with some of his abilities, more spell-like and less combat with like melee and range weapons. And then you have your Adept, which is your flat-out caster. And then what you can do is you can specialize all 4 of these classes. So each class has 4 different specializations. So of the 4 different specializations, you can go down different trees. So very cool, very similar to a lot of MMORPGs or other games where there's different trees, and depending on which tree you pick is what you do. So for instance, if you choose Adept, you could go down a tree that would make you more of a healer, and you could be a healer versus a straight-out magical damage dealer. So once you choose your class, you actually don't get to choose your specialization until you hit level 5. And so because you get to pick a brother-sister combo, you may want to pick 2 different classes that might synergize down the road depending on what specializations you choose. Now, that's what I like about the game. Because there's 4 specializations, there's a lot of replayability when it comes to building out different classes and trying out different specializations. So after you do that, we're going to get into the attributes. So just like any other RPG, your attributes are going to be very similar, you know, strength, dex, those types of things, constitution. And they all contribute to, you know, melee damage, range damage, mana regeneration, hit point regeneration, armor class, speed, you know, all of the normal things that you would see in an RPG. So once you kind of pick out what attributes work for the different class that you're trying to go for, then you can get into your equipment and into your skills. Now, the equipment build out is also pretty interesting. Each class has many different options to choose from. For instance, like the Ranger, you can go with a single rifle, you can go with dual pistols, you can go with a bow or a crossbow, two-hand crossbows. It's really great on how each class has many different build out options to both start with and then to build up as you go through the game. You know, you may want to attack faster and do more DPS because you shoot more often, or you may want to have a really heavy hitter and you want to shoot one bullet every 20 seconds, but if you hit somebody, you just want to take them out. So really like the different equipment you can get and the attribute system, and they all kind of are nice and they have good synergy. And then finally, you're going to get to your skills. So as you level up in the game, you will start to do skills, and the different skills are just going to increase, just like any other game, certain abilities you have, and also add new abilities to your bar that you didn't have before. So when you look at the combination of the classes, specializations, the skills, the equipment, I mean, there is a lot of character customization you can do in this game, and I think that's really cool, especially for somebody who's like a character customization crazy like myself. All right, so now we're going to get into the difficulty and control modes. So this game actually has a couple difficulty modes. In addition, you can choose between if you want to do RTS or RPG mode when it comes to the controls, the camera, the clicking, and all that. Now, I tried RTS mode at first, and I really didn't like it, so I switched to the RPG mode. I started to like that, but I did not like the controls. And so I was very upset, and I was hopeful that they would allow you to customize your keyboard. And when I went to go look in options, indeed, you can rebind all of your keys. So super awesome that they allow you to do key rebinds, because after I chose the RPG mode and I went in and configured my keyboard to the way that I wanted, it really made the gameplay much better for me. I really struggled in the beginning with controlling the camera and some of the other things, but once I was able to kind of change it around on the keyboard, it really made it quite pleasant to play the game, and I really enjoyed how it worked from there. Now, let's talk about the gameplay itself. The gameplay is similar to a lot of other RTS, or tactical combat games I've played, is you run in free movement, and then as combat starts, you all of a sudden go into slow-mo. And then it allows you to start to do your actions, and then you can turn slow-mo off, or you can continue to leave slow-mo on. Now, there are different things you pick up throughout the game. You have different interactions you can do. You have different crafting materials that you can use, which we'll cover here later. And in addition, they also have added in a couple things to the areas where when you do get into combat, you have to either utilize or stay away from some of the area effects. Like they had some cactuses that do piercing damage and cause you to bleed in some of the early levels. And then when you get to some of the other levels, there was like these things that would spin and they'd suck you into to these, like, whatever they are. And so you couldn't move away and you were being sucked towards these things. It was pretty interesting. So really like how the gameplay works. Now, I will say that there are cutscenes and they try really hard to have some dialogue, but there seems to be a issue with the translation and also with the mouths moving. So that is probably my biggest complaint about playing the demo, and hopefully they fix it, is when they're talking in the cutscenes, their words and what you're seeing on the screen are not aligned. So it kind of takes away from the actual cutscene itself. Other than that, I really enjoy the gameplay. I think the gameplay is pretty interesting, and I do like kind of how the story mode goes. So in addition to the gameplay and kind of the story, what they also has incorporated in this game is the ability to make choices. So there are several times where you have to choose a path, and depending on what path you choose and what decision you make, it's going to affect how the game works. So you can choose to kill somebody or to not kill somebody, and each different character will make a choice, and depending on who you side with will kind of change the outcome. So I really like that they've built that into the game. Now, my final conversation is going to be about some of the fights and how it's built out, and then we'll get into the crafting and a summary. Now, the combat in this game is pretty interesting. There is a diverse amount of creatures early on, but I haven't had a full sample size. It does feel fairly monotonous at times in how it's done, but I think they do a really good job of managing your health pools and how you do that. There's pretty much health wells throughout the game that you can utilize so many times, and then once you utilize them, you're done. So you have to be pretty particular on how often you heal your characters. And in addition, I think there are enough abilities to make it interesting. Now, there also are things you can do in combat, like hiding behind some different areas to get cover, similar to those other issues that you have in combat where you can, get shot by a cactus. There's also areas where you can hide and kind of reduce damage taken and that kind of thing. And in addition to all of that, they also have boss fights. Now, I did 2 boss fights in the demo. The first boss fight was fairly uneventful. They all seem to have the same model, right? You have a big boss who does have telegraphs, so you do have to move your characters out of the telegraphed area. But because it's slow motion and pause, it makes it a little bit easier to do. So the bosses themselves are not necessarily hard, but the 2 boss fights I did play, it had a lot to do with the ads. They had tons of ads that were coming at you from all sides, and so you had to manage all those ads and try and kill the boss at the same time. And so that's what really adds to the confusion and the difficult boss fights. But the bosses themselves were not too terrible. So I'm really hoping to see that maybe they get some more complicated boss fights in and not just do it based on all of the ads and have the bosses have a little bit cooler mechanics. But just having boss fights in the game and having to deal with telegraphed attacks while dealing with all your AoE or the area of effect things and dealing with all the ads, it did make for an entertaining time during the 2 boss fights that I played in. All right, so my final conclusion of this is going to be the crafting. So in addition to the equipment and all of the character building specializations, they also have a pretty robust crafting system. There are several tiers of the different crafting types of materials, and each tier you can use different materials to get the different rarities of those tiers. So if you're lower level, you can make a tier 1 weapon, but you can still choose to make it just a mundane gray or a green or a purple, and you can still enhance it at a lower level. Then you can also upgrade it or make more higher level items that require higher level materials and still use the right components to upgrade those into, again, a blue or a purple or a higher rarity. So there is a really good crafting system where you can get some pretty cool gear, and you can't just craft everything. There's also a research. So you have to find and or buy some of the actual research documents in order to learn the different crafting recipes. So I always like a game where the gear that is dropped is nice, but you also have the ability to craft some of the better gear, and they provide that in this game. That is pretty much what I wanted to cover about the game from the different topics. So I want to give you my summary of the game in whole. I feel like they've done a fantastic job with this game from the tactical RPG perspective. I feel like they have checked the box on all the important things that make a good game, from character customization to having a good crafting system, an online co-op mode, and even replayability, as well as some of the other important things you need in a game. The only 2 hesitations I have is I really don't like the different cutscenes and how the story is definitely not there. It reminds me a lot of Solasta, where the combat is fantastic, but the story is wah-wah, which is okay. I play these types of games for the combat. But the other thing that I'm a little worried about is some of the combat feels repetitive, not necessarily challenging, especially at these lower levels, including the boss fights, because of the slow motion mode. and I hope it does improve. Now, I will tell you that in Tower of Time, when you got higher up, the amount of waves of stuff that was coming at you was almost hard. You couldn't keep up with them, and it got pretty crazy and hectic there for a while. So I'm going to assume that's how it's going to be in this game as well, but I'm not 100% sure. So final thoughts. This game has so much potential. I really enjoyed the demo, and I actually was excited to keep playing through and trying some of the different classes and specializations. And if they do a good job with it and they fix some of the bugs and some of the weird things with like the talking and in the cutscenes, I really think this game is going to have a lot of potential. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give me some comments if you had anything you wanted to suggest. And I do believe this is going to be out on Steam for demo for people to play February 6th through the 13th. So go ahead and jump in and give it a try if, watching this video made you want to try it out. This is Van from the Vaniverse Gaming channel. I always appreciate any comments or feedback you can give me. And I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you in the next episode. We'll talk to you later. Cheers and peace out.